the train driver's view. Mostly he gets the backsides of houses flashed at him like drawless drunken women. No front room frill or bit of net, but a dressing down of open yards and washing lines, the off-white news that filters over fences. And in winter, as he slows for points or into cities, under the scrutiny of 60 watts, he spots a woman at the sink, up to her elbows in a row she's had the night, the year before. He thinks you can track the changes here in the trip along a passage from front door geranium to lean-to late night fags. All of life hanging in an outside lavatory, hooked like squares of hand-cut newsprint, filled with things you've never had and fluttering in the draft of people going places fast. And the absolutely stupendous thing about winning a competition like the Poetry Business Book and Pamphlet competition was that after years of submitting poems to the North and not getting in, not that it's an issue that I carry with me, they had to publish a poem in the magazine. And that was my first thought. The joy of winning was, yes, in the pamphlet. And that has nothing to do with my next poem. I just felt that I'd put it in. My uncle, during the Second World War, was a policeman, and it was a reserved occupation, so he couldn't go and fight. But he patrolled his beloved area of Salford and Cheetham Hill. And the very bad downside of that was that he witnessed the death of his father, who was an air raid warden. There was an explosion and his father was taken. And I'm very interested in the idea of place and the connection you have to it and how that can be weakened if you witness something like that, or if you lose someone. I remember when my parents passed that I felt less inclined towards Manchester than I had been before, and I think it must certainly be in this circumstance a stronger event. How you can know a place and not, how you can know it through your feet, through the pitch and crack of pavement, through games, their stones and sticks, through hopscotch numbers scratched on flags with chalk or coal, through the clip of ropes on curbs, the tap on grids, through the clap of hands, the toll of dustbin lids, the spark of studs on boots, through Messerschmitt and Spitfire arms, strobed or flecked with ration sun. How you can see a thing defined through shadows, the twitch of nets, the very thick of it, through the snatch and flare of two fags lit with the same match, through the warden's ball to put that bloody light out, to shut the flaming door. How one shell can reshape the place you know, shift a shelter 3 feet north, so you dig for the man in the tin hat in the wrong place. And how, when they lift your father caked in dust, there are no cuts, no bruises. This is how a man drowns in earth. This is how you know a place. And I spoke of Manchester a little while ago, and whenever I'm up there, I take my dog for a walk on this. It was the site of an old brickworks, but all the slag brick they've made into this kind of rough, irregular shaped hill. And if you go up there, you're plodding up there, you get this wonderful post-industrial landscape that was the place of my growing up, I suppose, with power and steel and a sense of what the earth gave up for us. So this is called Elmston Brickworks. Not much to show for it now, but blasted brick, and from the hill across the flats to Carrington, the Shell refinery burns off its oil late into the night, and pylons make a sampler of the sky, cross-stitching power with steel. There are starlings most mornings, toasting themselves on tensile thread, while underneath the brickworks unpicks itself. Scree is netted like Ada cloth against the slow crumble, each fall stained red, as though we pricked the past and it has opened up and bled for us. Just before I got married, so about 23 years ago, my middle of three older sisters was brushed or airlifted from Cornwall, where she lived, into London, and she was put on a life support machine, and we were told, as most people are told in that kind of thing, it's a case of whether they have enough gumption, enough fight to carry on. And I put you straight for a while, she was fine, she had the fight, so no panicking. But I don't want anybody worrying about it, getting nervous. But I found I couldn't write about that experience of watching my sister until I looked at it in an abstract way, and it seemed to me that what the doctors were asking of her and us was some kind of impossible activity in an improbable setting. So I put my sister's recovery on the moon. Surfacing. Clearly, on the slipcover of the moon, my sister is learning to swim. She cleaves the ward shade. Her strokes cut a swathe through powdered water. She has conquered, at last, her fear of drowning. Her costume is the pastel blaze of memory. Her cap punctuates each turn, a cursor for movement. She is sublime in her task, as though she was skimming the lanes of her life in a Victorian pool. Such determination, each kick, each palming of dust to the long, thin pace of the moon's breath. I call to her in her mirage, but on she swims, a shiver, a shine, searching for air, slipstreaming the light. And about 2 years ago, Selfridges celebrated their centenary of trading on Oxford Street. I'm saying street because there's an Oxford Road in Manchester, and I confuse the two, but it's Oxford Street. And I wanted to think about that feeling you get when you put a clothing, in this case it's a little black dress, but any item of clothing that you put on that makes you feel the person you are inside, not Kate Moss, not anybody else, but you inside. So this is in little black dresses. You'll find them in the changing rooms, shucking off at familiar things, stepping out of marriages and motherhood, and down to smalls, the known particulars of pleats and folds, until the years have slipped away like underskirts, and they are girls, and girls not wanting to be young or thin or tall or someone else, but just to have their due. Not stitched up in empress suits of clothes, but with new labels pressing at their necks, in Selfridges they change. And pulled from rails, the chance to wear their real lives for an hour over lunch, to redress the short-term self in LBDs, their cloth recut and spotlit in the cubicles of might have been. Clean lines now, in dresses that fit them well. And talking of magazines and not being published in the North, my last poem that was ever put in Smith's Knoll, because we've got Michael Lasky here, is a poem called Offspring, and I'm reading it because Michael's here, but also because the germ of it came about at the Aldeburgh Poetry Festival, and I took a break and I was sitting on the beach, and when you're writers, you tune your ear to things that you shouldn't be listening to. Somebody behind me was talking about a first contact being made by an adopted child and what their response, they were delighted, but they were wondering what their response would be. And I don't have any children, but I thought, crumbs, what happens if all these eggs that I didn't make children out of suddenly became children and came back to harangue me? And I feel they'd find me lacking. So here we go. Offspring. Someday All the children I didn't think to bear will come and find me. Fleshed out from egg and sperm, they will bombard me with questions I haven't learned to answer. Why didn't you let me have a dog, they'll ask, or puberty. The girls will demonstrate the flounce they never got to wear, and the boys will brood like storms. Hundreds of them, each a calendar cross apart, queuing up to say, "You are hopeless, mother, we cannot talk to you." And fathers will get away scot-free, dodge the flak, bugger off down to the garden shed to clean the tools they'll not pass on. My parents are first cousins, but remarkably they didn't meet until my dad was about 23 and my mum was 18 or 19. And she was in the WAF during the Second World War, and he was on leave from Special Operations Executive. And she was supposed to be bringing a girlfriend on leave with her, and her mother said, "You can't bring a friend because your cousin's here." And she determined she was going to hate him forever. 4 children and 50 years of marriage later, something had gone wrong. But I thought about that first meeting and about the last moment of their marriage, I suppose, and accidentally, I'd like to say it was all planned, but accidentally I used the idea of the hourglass, the sand to an hourglass, in both of the poems, and I was quite pleased afterwards to discover this accident. Going back to Charlotte Street, I clock them often on the stairs in the space between lost and borrowed. They're flanked by a parlour reserved for the dead, where only the boy with the telegram dares to knock, and a scullery alive with black market crops. She stops on the half landing, buffs her neck, scoops a victory wave under the net with a grip. Their first meeting is sand through an hourglass, running from her to him. And I am there too, ghosting the wall, a smudged image pressed flat on paper, sifting the grains, watching time and again the atoms of my own clock forming. Empty. When it's over, you'll slip your slow-broiled feet out of their shoes for the last time, fast freeze them on slate tiles, stack them on the rack. You'll slide open the top drawer of the tall boy, pull off each finger, slot them beside your nylons, handkerchiefs, rouge. You'll lift free your head, put it in the hat box, veiled in layers of black. Let it settle with the dust and cracked newspapers above the wardrobe. Finally, when there is only a hollowed out trunk, spilled of everything, you'll pour him into you as though time is set free of its glass, be quenched by the loss of him. And it is not only Smith Doorstop's wonderful birthday this year, today it is my husband's birthday, and I thought it might be nice to remind him of all those disastrous removal episodes that have ever happened in our life. The year a car turned up instead of a van, the year we moved into a house that was a repossession and they'd taken the door handles and all the power. So, happy birthday. 2 mugs. Corned beef chunks and tin spaghetti over a primus stove on the concrete floor of our new home. The cistern's blocked, the power's off, and someone's pinched the door handles. We have a mattress, 1 toothbrush, and the 2 mugs we fetch south with us in a banged-up wreck. Tomorrow the removals van will bring the rest, but tonight you say it'll never be better than this.